The power went out at 3 in the morning, and I knew immediately we were in for a rough few days, because the entire neighborhood of Millbrook Springs, Arizona depended on a single shared well system that I maintained. My name is Ryan Lawson, and I am probably the only person in our community who actually understood how our water infrastructure worked. When the development was built back in 2018, the builders had installed a complex well system that served 10 houses, including mine. The county water lines did not extend this far out into the desert, so we relied entirely on groundwater. Most of my neighbors had no idea that their morning showers, their coffee makers, their toilets, all depended on an industrial-grade water pump that sat in a concrete housing on my property, and that pump needed electricity to function. The generator I kept was not some small portable unit you could buy at Home Depot. This was a serious piece of equipment, a Generac 22 kW standby generator that I had purchased and installed at significant personal expense specifically to keep that water pump running during outages. Arizona summers were brutal, and going without water was not just inconvenient, it could be dangerous. I had spent nearly $8,000 on the generator installation, plus the concrete pad, the transfer switch, and the propane tank that fed it. The HOA had never reimbursed me a single cent, even though the system served multiple households. When the lights went dark that night, I got out of bed, threw on some clothes, and went outside to start the generator. The night air was cool, unusual for Arizona even in late October. I could see stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. The generator roared to life within seconds, and I heard the familiar hum of the water pump kicking back on. Everything was working exactly as it should. I went back to bed, satisfied that at least we would not have to deal with water problems on top of the power outage. My wife Sarah was still asleep, unbothered by the brief interruption. Our 2 dogs, Max and Luna, had barely lifted their heads from their beds in the corner of our room. The next morning, I woke up to discover the generator was gone. I stood in my backyard, staring at the empty concrete pad where $8,000 worth of equipment had been sitting just hours before. The propane line had been disconnected, the wires cut. Someone had come onto my property in the middle of the night and removed a 400-pound generator. I felt my blood pressure rising as I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. That was when I noticed the bright orange sticker on my back fence. I walked over and read it, my anger building with each word. Notice of violation. Unauthorized generator installation in violation of HOA Covenant Section 7.3. No external mechanical equipment visible from common areas. Equipment has been removed and impounded. Contact HOA office for retrieval. Fine, $500. HOA President Patricia Brennan. Patricia. Of course it was Patricia. Patricia Brennan had been the president of the Millbrook Springs HOA for the past 3 years, and she ruled over our small community like some kind of suburban dictator. She was 52 years old, had short blonde hair that she kept in that awful speak to the manager style, and she took an almost pathological pleasure in finding violations and issuing fines. In the past year alone, she had fined the Johnsons for having their trash cans visible from the street 2 hours past collection time, the Martins for planting the wrong shade of rose bushes, and old Mr. Chen for having a basketball hoop in his driveway that was apparently 3 inches taller than the covenant allowed. I had tried to stay off her radar, but apparently my generator had caught her attention. The fact that it was keeping water flowing to 10 families seemed to be irrelevant to her. I immediately tried turning on the kitchen faucet. A small trickle came out, then nothing. The pressure tank still had some water in it from the night, But once that was depleted, we would have nothing. I checked my phone and saw that the power company estimated restoration would not happen until at least tomorrow, possibly longer. A transformer had blown somewhere on the main line. Sarah came into the kitchen, already dressed for work. She was a nurse at the county hospital and had to be there by 7. "Is the water not working?" she asked, trying the faucet herself. "Patricia had the generator towed," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "The one that runs the well pump." "She what?" Sarah turned to face me, her expression shifting from confusion to anger. "Ryan, that generator runs the water for half the street. What was she thinking?" "She was thinking about covenant violations and her petty little power trip," I said. "I need to go talk to her right now before this becomes a bigger problem." Sarah glanced at her watch. "I have to get to work, but call me and let me know what happens. Maybe she just does not understand what the generator does." "Oh, I am going to make sure she understands," I said. The HOA office was located in a small building near the entrance to our development. It was only open on weekday mornings from 8 to noon, which was inconvenient for anyone who actually had a job. I drove over there at 7:50, parked in front, and waited. My truck's thermometer showed it was already 78 degrees outside, and it was only going to get hotter. At exactly 8 o'clock, Patricia's white Mercedes SUV pulled into the parking spot marked "Reserved for HOA President." She got out, wearing white capri pants and a floral blouse, carrying an oversized purse and a Starbucks cup. She did not even glance in my direction as she walked to the door, her heels clicking on the pavement. I got out of my truck and followed her. "Patricia, we need to talk." She turned, and I saw the flash of recognition in her eyes, followed immediately by that pursed lip expression of disapproval she always wore. "Mr. Lawson, if this is about your violation notice, you can schedule an appointment, or you can submit a written appeal to the board. Office hours are clearly posted." "You towed my generator," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "That generator runs the well pump that provides water to 10 houses in this neighborhood. Without it, those families have no water." Patricia took a sip of her coffee, completely unbothered. "The covenants are very clear, Mr. Lawson. Section 7.3 explicitly prohibits external mechanical equipment that is visible from common areas. Your generator was clearly visible from the walking path behind your property." "That walking path is barely used and the generator is behind my fence," I said. "And more importantly, it is essential infrastructure. People need water, Patricia. We are talking about basic utilities here." "The covenants make no exceptions for personal convenience," she said, unlocking the office door. "If you wanted to install a generator, you should have submitted the proper application and received board approval. Since you did not, the equipment was removed. You can retrieve it from the impound lot once you have paid the fine and submitted a removal plan that satisfies the board." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. "A removal plan? Patricia, I am not removing anything. That generator needs to be back on my property today, right now, or people are going to be without water." "That is not the HOA's problem," Patricia said, stepping inside the office. "That is your problem for installing prohibited equipment. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." "You can schedule an appointment if you need to discuss this further." She tried to close the door, but I put my hand against it. "Listen to me very carefully. That well pump serves the Hendersons, the Chens, the Ramirez family, the Johnsons, the Patels, the Williams family, the Martins, the Kowalskis, the Thompsons, and my family. That is 10 households, Patricia. 37 people total. Without power, that pump does not work. Without that generator, those people have no water for drinking, cooking, bathing, or toilets. Do you understand what I am saying?" Patricia's expression did not change. "Then perhaps you should contact the power company and ask them to expedite their repairs. Or those families can make other arrangements. This is not an HOA matter. The generator violated the covenants and it has been removed. That is the end of the discussion." She pulled the door closed, and I heard the lock click into place. I stood there for a moment, absolutely stunned by her callousness. Then I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, I called the towing company whose information was on the notice. They informed me that they had the generator, that it would cost $500 to retrieve it plus a $50 per day storage fee, and that I would need written authorization from the HOA before they could release it to me. Next, I called Jim Henderson, who lived 3 houses down from me. Jim was a retired engineer, late 60s, and he had always been reasonable. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Jim, this is Ryan Lawson. We have got a major problem. The HOA towed my generator last night, and the well pump is not running. You probably have not noticed yet because there is still some water in the pressure tank, but by this afternoon, everyone is going to be completely dry." There was a long pause. "They towed your generator?" "The one that runs the water system." "Yes. Patricia put a violation notice on my fence and had it removed in the middle of the night. I just talked to her, and she does not care that it is leaving everyone without water. She said it is not the HOA's problem." Jim let out a long breath. "That woman is unbelievable. Okay, let me make some calls. I will contact the other homeowners who are on the well system. We need to put pressure on the board to fix this immediately." "Thanks, Jim. I am going to try to figure out the legal situation. There has got to be something we can do." I spent the next hour calling lawyers. Most of them were not interested in taking on an HOA case on such short notice, but I finally reached an attorney named David Russo who specialized in property law and HOA disputes. I explained the situation to him, and he listened carefully. "So let me make sure I understand," David said. "You maintain a well pump on your property that provides water to multiple households. You installed a generator at your own expense to keep that pump running during power outages. The HOA has now removed that generator, which has left those households without water, and they are refusing to let you retrieve it." "That is exactly right," I said. "And how long has the generator been there?" "About 2 years. I installed it after we had a 4-day power outage in the summer of 2023. It got up to 114 degrees, and people were really suffering without water. I spent my own money to make sure it would not happen again." "Did the HOA ever approve the installation?" "I sent them a notification email when I installed it," I said. "I explained what it was for and included pictures showing it was behind my fence and not easily visible. I never heard back, so I assumed it was fine." David made a thoughtful sound. "Okay, here is what you need to know. Arizona law requires that HOAs act reasonably and in good faith. If they are preventing you from maintaining essential utilities that serve multiple households, that could be considered a breach of their fiduciary duty. However, HOAs do have broad authority to enforce their covenants, so this could go either way." "So what do I do?" I asked. "First, document everything. Take pictures of the empty area where the generator was. Save all your communications with the HOA, and get written statements from the other homeowners about how this is affecting them. Second, send a formal demand letter to the HOA requiring them to either return your generator immediately or provide alternative water service to the affected households. Make it clear that their actions are causing real harm. Third, if they do not comply within 24 hours, we file for an emergency injunction." "How much is this going to cost me?" I asked. For the demand letter and initial filing, about $1,500. If this goes to court, potentially much more. But honestly, I think once they realize you are serious and that they could be liable for damages, they will back down. HOAs hate bad publicity and legal fees. Okay, I said. Let us do it. Draft the demand letter and send it today. By noon, word had spread through the neighborhood. Jim Henderson had called everyone who was affected, and they were not happy. The Ramirez family had 3 young kids. The Patels had an elderly grandmother living with them who needed regular access to water for her medications. The Johnsons were trying to work from home and needed basic facilities. Everyone was suddenly very interested in what the HOA had done. My phone rang. It was Maria Ramirez. "Ryan, my kids keep trying to flush the toilet and nothing is working. I had to explain that we do not have water. This is completely unacceptable. What can we do?" "I've got a lawyer working on it," I said. "He is sending a demand letter to the HOA today. In the meantime, you might want to buy some bottled water and maybe fill up some containers at a friend's house if you can." "This is insane," Maria said. "How can Patricia just cut off water to 10 families? That has got to be illegal." "I am hoping the lawyer can convince her of that," I said. Sarah called me around 1 in the afternoon. "Ryan, I am seeing posts in the neighborhood Facebook group. People are really upset. Someone suggested everyone show up to Patricia's house to protest." "That is probably not a good idea," I said. "The last thing we need is for this to escalate into some kind of confrontation. I have got a lawyer handling it." "Well, you might want to check Facebook anyway. Patricia just posted something, and it is not good." I pulled up the Millbrook Springs community Facebook group on my phone. Sure enough, Patricia had posted a long message about an hour ago. "Attention residents. It has come to my attention that several homeowners are upset about the removal of an unauthorized generator from the Lawson property. I want to clarify the situation. The HOA has a responsibility to enforce our covenants fairly and consistently. Mr. Lawson installed a large commercial generator without board approval, in direct violation of Section 7.3. The generator was an eyesore and created noise pollution. After multiple complaints from neighbors, the board voted to have it removed. Mr. Lawson is attempting to manipulate the situation by claiming this affects the water supply. But that is a private maintenance issue, not an HOA matter. The HOA is not responsible for Mr. Lawson's failure to plan for power outages without violating community standards. Any homeowners with concerns about their water supply should direct those concerns to Mr. Lawson, not the HOA. The board stands by its decision." I read the post 3 times, my anger growing with each word. Multiple complaints from neighbors. That was a lie. Nobody had ever complained about my generator. The board voted to have it removed. The board consisted of Patricia and 2 other people who did whatever she told them to do. And the suggestion that this was my failure to plan. I had planned. That was the entire point of the generator. The comments section below her post was already filling up. Jim Henderson had written, "This is completely misleading. That generator provides essential services to multiple families. The board did not consult with any of the affected homeowners before taking this action." Maria Ramirez commented, "My family has been without water all day because of this decision. How is that not an HOA matter when the HOA caused the problem?" Several other people chimed in with support, but there were also comments from people who were not on the well system who seemed to think Patricia was in the right. Carol Winters wrote, "The rules exist for a reason. If we let people ignore the covenants, then what is the point of having them?" Thomas Grant added, "I agree with Patricia. These suburban neighborhoods are supposed to be attractive. Industrial equipment does not belong in residential areas. I resisted the urge to respond and instead called David Russo. The HOA president just posted on Facebook claiming that neighbors complained about my generator and that the board voted to remove it. That is not what happened. She had it towed without any warning or board meeting. Perfect, David said. That is defamation and it strengthens our case. Screenshot everything she wrote. I am almost done with the demand letter and I will include references to her Facebook post. This woman is digging herself into a hole. By 4 in the afternoon, the situation had gotten worse. The water pressure had completely died. People were starting to panic. Mrs. Patel called me in tears, explaining that her mother-in-law needed to take her medication with water, and they had run out of bottled water. I drove to the store, bought a case, and brought it to their house. Mr. Chen stopped me as I was leaving the Patels. He was a quiet man, usually kept to himself, but he looked angry. Mr. Lawson, I served in the military for 23 years. I have been in combat zones with better organization than this HOA. What Patricia has done is unconscionable. I want to help. What can I do? Right now, the best thing is to document how this is affecting you, I said. My lawyer needs written statements from everyone. The more evidence we have that this is causing real harm, the stronger our case. You will have my statement tonight, Mr. Chen said. At 5:30, David Russo called me back. I have sent the demand letter via email and certified mail. I made it very clear that the HOA's actions have created a health and safety hazard, that they are potentially liable for damages, and that we will seek an emergency injunction if they do not return the generator within 24 hours. I also mentioned the defamatory Facebook post and suggested they might want to retract it. "Do you think it will work?" I asked. Honestly, it depends on how stubborn they are. Some HOA boards are reasonable when they realize they have made a mistake. Others double down and make things worse. We will find out tomorrow. That night was miserable. Sarah and I had to ration our bottled water. We could not shower, could not do laundry, could not run the dishwasher. We used paper plates and plastic utensils for dinner. The toilets could not be flushed more than once or twice before the tank emptied and would not refill. It was like living in a third-world country, except we were in Arizona in 2025 and this was entirely preventable. I barely slept. I kept thinking about all the families who were going through the same thing, especially the kids and elderly people. This was not just an inconvenience. Without water, people could not maintain basic hygiene. In October, the heat was not as bad as summer, but it was still warm enough that people needed to stay hydrated and clean. The next morning, I woke up to find that Patricia had not responded to the demand letter. David filed for an emergency injunction at the county courthouse, and we got a hearing scheduled for that afternoon at 2 o'clock. David explained that emergency hearings were rare, but given that this involved essential utilities for multiple families, the judge had agreed to see us quickly. I called Jim Henderson and told him about the hearing. "Do you think some of the other homeowners could come? The judge needs to see that this is not just about me, it is about everyone on the well system." "I will make it happen," Jim said. "We will be there." The hearing was held in a small courtroom at the Maricopa County Courthouse. Judge Linda Torres presided. She was a woman in her early 60s with gray hair pulled back in a bun and a no-nonsense expression. David and I sat at one table, and Patricia sat at the other with the HOA's attorney, a man named Robert Finch who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Behind us in the gallery sat Jim Henderson, Maria Ramirez, Mr. Chen, the Johnsons, and several other affected homeowners. The Patels had wanted to come, but could not leave Mrs. Patel's mother alone. Judge Torres looked over the paperwork, then addressed the room. I have reviewed Mr. Lawson's emergency motion for an injunction. Mr. Lawson is asking the court to order the Homeowners Association to return a generator that was removed from his property. He claims that generator is essential for operating a well pump that provides water to multiple households. The HOA contends that the generator violated community covenants and was properly removed. Is that an accurate summary? Yes, Your Honor, David said. Yes, Your Honor, Robert Finch echoed. All right. Mr. Russo, your client has the burden of proof here. Explain to me why this constitutes an emergency that requires immediate judicial intervention. David stood. Your Honor, 10 households in the Millbrook Springs development, totaling 37 residents, depend on a single well system for their water supply. That well system requires an electric pump. When power is out, as it currently is in that area, the pump does not operate unless there is a backup generator. My client installed such a generator at his own expense specifically to maintain water service during outages. 2 nights ago, the HOA had that generator removed without warning, without consultation with the affected homeowners, and without providing any alternative water source. Those 37 people, including young children and elderly residents, have now been without water for more than 48 hours. Judge Torres looked at Patricia and her attorney. Is this accurate? Are these people without water? Robert Finch stood. Your Honor, the HOA's position is that the generator violated clearly established covenants. Mr. Lawson installed industrial equipment on his property without seeking board approval. The HOA has both the right and the obligation to enforce its covenants. The fact that Mr. Lawson chose to connect essential infrastructure to equipment that violated those covenants is not the HOA's responsibility. That does not answer my question, Judge Torres said sharply. Are these people currently without water? Yes or no? I believe they are experiencing some inconvenience, yes, Finch said. Some inconvenience. Maria Ramirez spoke up from the gallery. Your Honor, I have 3 kids who have not been able to bathe in 2 days. We cannot flush our toilets. We cannot wash dishes or clothes. This is not an inconvenience. This is a health crisis. Madam, please, the judge said, but her tone was not unkind. I appreciate your concern, but you need to let the attorney speak. She turned back to Finch. Counselor, I am going to ask you again. Are these families currently without water because the HOA removed this generator? Finch shifted uncomfortably. The water issue is a result of the power outage, Your Honor, not the generator removal per se. But they would have water if the generator was still in place, correct? Potentially, yes, but that does not change the fact that the generator violated the covenants. Judge Torres removed her glasses and set them on the desk in front of her. Mr. Finch, I have been a judge for 18 years, and I have seen a lot of HOA disputes. Usually they involve petty disagreements about fence heights or paint colors. This is the first time I have seen an HOA take action that has left dozens of people without access to water. That is not petty. That is serious. Your Honor, the HOA has a fiduciary duty to enforce its covenants, Finch said. If we make exceptions, the entire structure breaks down. And what about the HOA's duty to act reasonably? David interjected. Arizona law requires HOAs to exercise their authority in good faith. Cutting off water to 37 people because you do not like how a generator looks is not reasonable, Your Honor. It is reckless and it is harmful. Judge Torres held up her hand. I want to hear from Mrs. Brennan directly. Mrs. Brennan, please stand. Patricia stood, smoothing her skirt. She looked confident, almost defiant. Mrs. Brennan, you are the HOA president, is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. When you decided to have Mr. Lawson's generator removed, did you know it was connected to the well pump? I knew he claimed it was, Patricia said. But Mr. Lawson has a history of exaggerating issues to get his way. That is a lie, I said, unable to stop myself. David put a hand on my arm to quiet me. Judge Torres looked at me. Mr. Lawson, I understand you are upset, but you need to let me conduct this hearing. She turned back to Patricia. Did you or did you not know that the generator was connected to essential water infrastructure before you had it removed? Patricia hesitated. I knew he used it for his well pump, yes. And did you know that the well pump serves multiple households? I knew that other people were on the same well system, but that is Mr. Lawson's private arrangement. It has nothing to do with the HOA. Actually, Your Honor, it does, David said, standing again. The well system was installed by the original developer as part of the subdivision. The plat maps and disclosure documents provided to all homeowners when they purchase their properties specifically identify which homes are on the shared well system. This is not a private arrangement. This is infrastructure that was part of the original development plan. Judge Torres looked at Finch. Is that true? Finch looked at Patricia, who was now looking less confident. I would need to review the original development documents to confirm, he said. Your Honor, I have copies right here, David said, pulling out a folder. These are the original disclosure documents from when my client purchased his home in 2019. Page 7 clearly states that the property is part of a 10-home shared well system. Every homeowner on that system received the same disclosure. This is not something Mr. Lawson set up on his own. This is how the neighborhood was built. Judge Torres took the documents and read through them. The courtroom was silent. I could hear Maria Ramirez shifting in her seat behind me, the rustle of her jacket. Finally, the judge set the papers down. Mrs. Brennan, it appears that you removed a generator that was maintaining essential infrastructure for 10 households, infrastructure that was part of the original development plan. You did this without consulting those households, without providing any alternative water service, and during a power outage when you knew they would be left without water. Do I have that right? Patricia's face was getting red. Your Honor, the covenants are clear. External mechanical equipment must be approved by the board. Mr. Lawson never submitted an application. Did he notify the board about the generator? The judge asked. He sent an email, Patricia admitted. But an email is not the same as a formal application. And did the board respond to his email? We did not feel a response was necessary. Judge Torres shook her head. So your position is that Mr. Lawson should have known to file a formal application even though he notified you and you never told him there was a problem. The covenants are available to all homeowners, Patricia said. Ignorance is not an excuse. Neither is unreasonableness, Judge Torres said. She looked at David. Mr. Russo, what is your client asking for? Your Honor, we are asking for an immediate order requiring the HOA to authorize the release of the generator so it can be reinstalled and water service can be restored. We are also asking for an order prohibiting the HOA from interfering with the generator going forward, and we are seeking damages for the cost of the towing, storage fees, legal fees, and compensation for the affected homeowners. Your Honor, that is excessive, Finch protested. If the court feels the generator should be returned, we can agree to that, but damages are not appropriate. The HOA was acting within its authority. Were you? Judge Torres said. Because from where I sit, it looks like the HOA caused significant harm to multiple families based on an unreasonable interpretation of a covenant, but we will address damages later. For now, I am issuing an emergency order. The HOA is required to immediately provide written authorization for the release of Mr. Lawson's generator. Mr. Lawson is authorized to reinstall the generator on his property. The HOA is prohibited from interfering with the generator or attempting to remove it again pending a full hearing on the merits. That hearing will be scheduled within 30 days. Do you understand, Mrs. Brennan? Patricia's jaw was tight. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Mr. Finch, I want that authorization delivered to the towing company within 2 hours. If I hear that there has been any delay, I will hold your client in contempt. Are we clear? Yes, Your Honor. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. David shook my hand. That went about as well as we could have hoped. Judge Torres clearly saw through the HOA's nonsense. Behind us, the other homeowners were all smiles. Jim Henderson clapped me on the back. You did it, Ryan. You actually beat the HOA. We are not done yet, I said. We still have the full hearing in 30 days, but at least people will have water tonight. We walked out of the courtroom together, and I saw Patricia standing in the hallway with her attorney. She was arguing with him in a low, angry voice. When she saw me looking, she shot me a glare that could have melted steel. I drove straight to the towing company with David's copy of the judge's order. The clerk at the desk was a young guy, maybe 25, with tattoos running down both arms. He read the order, made a copy, and then walked me out to the impound lot. Here is your generator, he said, pointing to where it sat among the cars and trucks. You are going to need a trailer to move it. That thing is heavy. I've got a truck and a ramp, I said. I will manage. It took me an hour to load the generator, secure it with straps, and drive it carefully back to my house. By the time I got home, it was almost 5 in the evening. Jim Henderson and Mr. Chen were both waiting in my driveway. We figured you might need some help getting it reinstalled, Jim said. The three of us spent the next 2 hours reconnecting everything. The propane line, the electrical connections, the transfer switch. The sun was setting by the time we were finished, but when I started the generator, the sound of the water pump kicking on was the most beautiful thing I had heard in days. We have got water, Sarah called from inside the house. I could hear the faucet running in the kitchen. My phone started buzzing with text messages. Maria Ramirez. Water is back. Thank you so much, Mrs. Patel. You are a blessing, Mr. Lawson. The Johnsons, the Martins, the Kowalskis, everyone was texting to say thank you. Jim Henderson shook my hand. You did good, Ryan. You stood up to Patricia and you won. That is not easy. I could not have done it without all of you, I said. And it is not over. We still have to deal with the full hearing and the question of damages. Whatever you need, Jim said. We have got your back. That night, Sarah and I were finally able to take showers, do laundry, and return to something approaching normal life. The power company had estimated that electricity would be restored by tomorrow afternoon, but at least now it did not matter. We had water regardless. I checked the neighborhood Facebook group before bed and saw that Patricia had deleted her earlier post. There were several new posts, though, from the affected homeowners thanking me and criticizing the HOA's actions. Carol Winters, who had previously supported Patricia, wrote a comment saying she had been wrong and that the HOA had gone too far this time. The next morning, power was restored around 10. The generator automatically switched off once it detected grid power, and everything went back to normal. I disconnected the generator from the transfer switch and let it cool down, then secured it with a heavy chain and lock. If Patricia tried to tow it again, she was going to have a much harder time. David Russo called me that afternoon. I've got good news. The HOA's attorney reached out to me. They want to settle. Settle what? I asked. The judge already ruled in our favor. They want to settle the full case, David said. They are willing to formally acknowledge that the generator is essential infrastructure, exempt it from the covenant restrictions, reimburse you for all your costs including legal fees, and pay each affected household $1,000 in compensation. In exchange, you agree not to pursue any further damages or file a formal complaint against the board members. I thought about it. How much are we talking in total? Your towing fees, storage fees, and my fees come to about $3,000. 10 households at $1,000 each is another $10,000, so $13,000 total. And if we do not settle, then we go to the full hearing in 30 days and we argue about damages. We will probably win, but it will take time and there is always some uncertainty. The settlement gets you immediate resolution and money in everyone's pockets. What do you think I should do? Honestly, take the settlement. You have already won the important part. The generator stays and the HOA cannot touch it. The money is a nice bonus, and it sends a message to Patricia that she messed up. If you drag this out, you will spend more on legal fees and everyone will be stressed for another month or more. Let me talk to the other homeowners, I said. I want to make sure they are okay with it. I called Jim Henderson first, then the others. Everyone agreed that the settlement was fair. Maria Ramirez said the $1,000 would cover all the bottled water and inconvenience, and more importantly, it felt like the HOA was being held accountable. Mr. Chen said he was just glad the problem was resolved and that Patricia had been put in her place. I called David back. We will take the settlement. Good choice, he said. I will let their attorney know. You should have a check within 2 weeks. The settlement was finalized a week later. The HOA sent out a notice to all residents explaining that the generator on my property was exempt from covenant restrictions due to its role in maintaining essential water infrastructure. Patricia did not sign the notice. It was signed by the vice president, a man named Gregory Fuller, who I had spoken to maybe twice in 3 years. 2 weeks after that, I received a check for $3,000 covering my expenses, and each of the other affected homeowners received their $1,000 payments. It was not life-changing money, but it felt good to be compensated for the trouble Patricia had caused. But the story did not end there. About a month later, I got a call from Jim Henderson. Ryan, you need to see this. Patricia is being investigated. Investigated for what? I asked. Come over to my house. I will explain everything. I drove over to Jim's place, and he brought me into his home office. His computer screen showed a local news website. The headline read, Millbrook Springs HOA President under investigation for financial misconduct. I leaned in and read the article. Apparently, several homeowners had started asking questions about HOA finances after the generator incident. They wanted to know where their dues were going, especially since the HOA had agreed to pay out $13,000 in the settlement. When they requested financial records, as was their right under Arizona law, Patricia had refused to provide them. That had prompted some homeowners to file a formal complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, which oversees HOA operations. The department had launched an investigation, and their preliminary findings suggested that significant amounts of money were missing from the HOA accounts. How much money are we talking about? I asked. The article says potentially over $80,000 over the past 3 years, Jim said. Patricia had control of the HOA bank accounts, and apparently she was writing checks to herself for various expenses that were never properly documented. Landscaping services that were never performed, legal fees for lawyers who were never hired, consulting fees for consultants who do not exist. She was basically embezzling from the HOA. I sat back in Jim's office chair, stunned. How did nobody notice? She was the president and the treasurer. She controlled everything. The other board members just rubber-stamped whatever she told them, and most homeowners do not pay attention to HOA finances unless there is a reason to. So what happens now? I asked. The Department of Real Estate is turning their findings over to the county attorney's office. Patricia could be facing criminal charges. Over the next few weeks, the investigation intensified. The local news ran several more stories about it. Reporters interviewed homeowners, including me. I told them about the generator incident and how it had prompted people to start asking harder questions about HOA management. Patricia resigned as HOA president in early December, claiming health reasons. A week later, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office announced that she was being charged with fraudulent schemes and theft, both felonies under Arizona law. The total amount she had allegedly stolen was $87,000. The case moved slowly through the legal system. Patricia hired an expensive defense attorney and tried to claim that all the payments were legitimate HOA expenses. But the evidence was overwhelming. The Department of Real Estate had audited 3 years of records and found dozens of fraudulent transactions, checks made out to cash, payments to companies that did not exist, credit card charges for personal expenses that Patricia had claimed were HOA business. In March of 2026, almost 6 months after the generator incident, Patricia accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of fraudulent schemes and 1 count of theft. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison, with the possibility of early release after 18 months if she maintained good behavior. She was also ordered to pay full restitution of $87,000 to the HOA. I attended the sentencing hearing along with Jim Henderson and several other homeowners. Patricia stood before the judge, looking nothing like the confident, imperious HOA president I had confronted in that office parking lot. She was wearing an orange jail jumpsuit, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She had lost weight. She looked defeated. The judge addressed her directly. "Mrs. Brennan, you held a position of trust in your community. Your neighbors elected you to manage their homeowners association, to handle their money responsibly, and to make decisions in their best interest. Instead, you abused that trust. You stole from your neighbors, and when people started asking questions, you tried to cover it up. The generator incident that brought this to light was particularly egregious because your actions left families without access to water, and you showed no remorse or concern for the harm you caused. Your conduct demonstrates a level of entitlement and disregard for others that this court finds deeply troubling." Patricia did not say anything. Her attorney had advised her to remain silent except to acknowledge the sentence. "The sentence is 3 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections, with credit for time served," the judge continued. "You are also ordered to pay $87,000 in restitution, plus court costs and fees. You are prohibited from serving in any HOA leadership position in the future. Do you understand the sentence?" "Yes, Your Honor," Patricia said quietly. The bailiff led her away, and that was the last time I saw Patricia Brennan. The HOA elected a new board in April. Jim Henderson became the president. One of the first things the new board did was formally approve my generator installation and exempt it from any covenant restrictions. They also passed a new rule that any board actions that could affect essential utilities had to be approved by a majority vote of all affected homeowners, not just the board. The new board also hired a professional property management company to handle the HOA's finances and day-to-day operations. Nobody wanted another Patricia situation. As for me, life gradually returned to normal. The generator sat on its concrete pad behind my fence, ready to kick on whenever the power went out. I had installed a small monitoring system that sent alerts to my phone if anything went wrong with the generator or the well pump. I also created a simple website where the other homeowners on the well system could check the status of the water system at any time. We had one more significant power outage that summer, during a monsoon storm that knocked down power lines across the county. The electricity was out for 2 days. My generator ran perfectly, and all 10 households had continuous water service. Several of my neighbors brought over food and drinks to thank me, and we ended up having an impromptu block party in my backyard, while the generator hummed away in the background. Sarah and I were sitting on our back patio one evening in late August, watching the sun set over the desert, when she said, "You know, I was thinking about everything that happened last year. If Patricia had not towed your generator, nobody would have started looking into the HOA finances. She would probably still be stealing money and nobody would have known." "That is true," I said. "Although I wish there had been an easier way to figure it out. Those 2 days without water were pretty awful. But it worked out in the end," Sarah said. "You stood up to her. You fought back. And you exposed what she was really doing." "I just wanted my generator back," I said. "I did not expect to uncover embezzlement and send someone to prison." "That is what makes it even better," Sarah said. "You were not trying to be a hero. You were just trying to do the right thing. And sometimes that is enough." I thought about that. She was right. I had not set out to take down Patricia Brennan or reform the HOA. I had just wanted to make sure my neighbors had water during a power outage. Everything else had followed from that one simple goal. The restitution money from Patricia was used to replenish the HOA's reserve fund and to make some long overdue improvements to the common areas. The new board was transparent about every decision, published monthly financial reports, and actually listened to homeowners when they had concerns. It was night and day compared to how things had been under Patricia. Jim Henderson stopped by my house one Saturday morning in September. "Ryan, the board wants to do something to thank you for everything that happened. We were thinking we could reimburse you for the original cost of the generator installation, the $8,000 you spent. It is only fair, since it is serving 10 households." "You do not have to do that," I said. "The settlement already covered my costs for the towing and legal fees." "I know we do not have to," Jim said, "but we want to. That generator is community infrastructure. You should not have had to pay for it out of your own pocket. The HOA should have helped from the beginning." "Well, if you are sure the rest of the board agrees, I am not going to say no," I said. "That $8,000 would be nice to have back in savings." "It is unanimous," Jim said. "We will get you a check by the end of the month." True to his word, I received a check for $8,000 from the HOA 3 weeks later, along with a letter of appreciation signed by all the board members and many of the homeowners. It was a nice gesture, and it felt like the right way to close this chapter. I framed the letter and hung it in my garage, right above where the generator's original receipt was taped to the wall. Whenever I went out there to check on the generator or do some work, I would see that letter and remember everything that had happened. The generator incident, as it came to be known in our neighborhood, became something of a legend. New homeowners who moved into the development would hear the story from their neighbors. People would point out my house and say, "That is Ryan Lawson's place. He is the one who took down the corrupt HOA president." I always felt a little uncomfortable with that characterization. I had not taken down anybody. Patricia had taken herself down by stealing from her neighbors. I had just been in the right place at the right time, and stubborn enough not to back down when I knew I was in the right. But I suppose that is how these things work. Somebody has to be willing to stand up and say, "This is wrong," when everyone else is just going along with it. Somebody has to be willing to fight back when authority is being abused. In this case, that somebody happened to be me. Looking back now, more than a year later, I can see how all the pieces fit together. The power outage, the generator, Patricia's vindictive response, the court hearing, the investigation, the criminal charges, and finally the reform of the HOA. Each event led naturally to the next, like dominoes falling in sequence. If any one thing had been different, the outcome might have been different too. If I had not installed the generator in the first place, or if I had caved to Patricia's demands and just paid the fine, or if the other homeowners had not supported me, or if Judge Torres had ruled differently, or if nobody had thought to investigate the HOA's finances. Any of those could have changed everything. But that is the thing about standing up for what is right. You cannot control all the variables. You can only control your own actions, your own choices. You have to decide whether you are going to fight or fold, whether you are going to accept injustice or challenge it. Everything else is just details. The generator still sits on its concrete pad behind my fence, exactly where it has always been. It is secured with chains now, not because I think anyone will try to tow it again, but because it is valuable equipment and I want to protect my investment. The HOA has a spare key to the lock, just in case something happens to me and they need access in an emergency. The well pump runs smoothly, providing water to 10 households just as it always has. I check it weekly, making sure everything is functioning properly. I keep detailed maintenance records. I treat it like the essential infrastructure it is, because I learned the hard way what happens when that infrastructure fails. Sarah sometimes jokes that I should run for HOA president, given everything that happened. I always laugh and tell her absolutely not. I have no desire to be in charge of the HOA. I just want to live in my house, maintain the well pump, and not have to deal with power-hungry board members who think their authority is more important than their neighbors' well-being. Jim Henderson is doing a great job as president anyway. He is fair, transparent, and reasonable. He actually cares about the community rather than just wielding power over it. That is what an HOA president should be. The whole experience taught me something important about how communities function. Most of the time, people just want to live their lives without drama or conflict. They pay their dues, they follow the rules, and they trust that the people in charge are acting in good faith. But that trust can be abused, and when it is, somebody has to speak up. I also learned that HOAs, for all their problems, can actually work the way they are supposed to when the right people are in charge. The new board has made our neighborhood better. They have improved the common areas, organized community events, and handled disputes fairly. They have shown that an HOA does not have to be the enemy of its residents. But the most important lesson is this: when you know something is wrong, you have to act. You cannot just hope someone else will deal with it, or assume that authority figures know what they are doing. Sometimes authority figures are corrupt, or incompetent, or just plain wrong. And when that happens, ordinary people have to be willing to stand up and fight back. I did not want to become the guy who fought the HOA. I did not want to spend money on lawyers or sit through court hearings or deal with all the stress and drama. But I had to, because the alternative was letting Patricia continue to abuse her power and hurt my neighbors. And in the end, it was worth it. Not just because I got my generator back, or because I was reimbursed for my expenses, or because Patricia went to prison. It was worth it because I did the right thing, and because that right thing led to positive change for everyone in our community. The generator is still there, humming away whenever the power goes out, keeping water flowing to 10 households. And every time I hear it start up, I remember what it cost to protect it, and I am glad I paid that price. Because sometimes doing the right thing is expensive. Sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes it requires fighting battles you never wanted to fight. But it is always, always worth it in the end.